Hello there, and welcome back to the railway.
In today's video, I'm going to be working on the hard standing area that's going to be going here in the steam depot area. So you can see this line at the back here, that's roughly where the hard standing is going to end, and it's going to come just about out to here, and then we'll cross over those tracks. So with the 6 tracks here, they're all going to be covered in hard standing, and I'll also fill in this gap up here as well, so that trench is also filled in. But so what I'm going to do with this trench bit, it's all going to be the same height as this, so the rails are above the hard standing. But when it gets to these tracks here, which are inside the shed, they're going to be, the hard standing is going to be flush with the tops of the rails. So I'll just start getting that done and I'll show you how it's going. So you might be wondering what I'm going to be using to make this hard standing area. And it's this, Das Modeller's clay. So this is an air drying clay. So what I've seen some other people use this for similar things. To make sure that the hard standing stays perfectly flat all the way over and that there's no lumps and bumps anywhere, I'm going to be using this rolling pin. Hopefully that should then keep everything as smooth as possible. So first things first, I thought it would be a good idea to clean the tops of all of the rails going into the hard standing area before I applied any of the modelling clay. Here you can see me putting the shed in place where it will be going, just so I could then get some lines drawn on for the outline of the shed, so I could make sure that when I started making the hard standing area that it was as wide as it needed to be, so that the shed didn't hang off any sides. With that now done, I can remove the shed and place it to one side for later, and I can begin opening the packet of modelling clay and show you how it looks. To make sure that the clay didn't dry out, I only opened the one end and gradually increased the size of the opening as and when I needed to. So first of all, I removed this section of clay from the packet, as you can see here. I then used the knife I'd used to get it out of the main block to cut this in half to help me spread it out along the track. I had no idea how this was going to go, as this was my first time using any modelling clay. So at first I wasn't sure which way was best to use it, so I thought making it thinner like this and gently placing it on top of the rails was the best way to go. This turned out not to be the case, and you'll see what worked better later in the video. So as you'll see here, the first method that I tried was just simply placing it on top of the rails and then pushing it onto the tracks using the rolling pin. At first, this seemed to be working very well. As you can see here, gradually it got flatter and flatter and was going very flush with the rails, just as I had wanted it. But as you'll see from this section here, the clay started to rip up as I was rolling the rolling pin backwards. This was when I first realised that I might need to use a different approach. I started off forcefully pushing the clay down into the track to see if that would help it stick. But as I discovered on this side over here, it was not stuck down at all. And this was because using the rolling pin to just flatten it on top of the rails left several air pockets underneath, which meant that the clay would not stay where it was supposed to, which was what led to it ripping up when the rolling pin went over the top of it. So I decided to take up all of the loose sections, and I thought I would start again. This time with a different technique and not starting in the middle of the area I wanted to be done. So first of all, after deciding where I was starting, I decided I would try and press the clay into the tracks as hard as I could to try and prevent any air pockets from being underneath when I started rolling it and flattening it into the tracks. So as you can see here, I was just trying to ease it into all of the grooves and gaps in between the tracks before I then applied the rolling pin. So it was already reasonably flat, just not as low as it needed to be, and that all I used the rolling pin for was then condensing and compressing it down to make it more robust. I then found that when I did start using the rolling pin gently to smoothen out the surface of the hard standing area, that it worked a lot better than before. I also used a little bit of water in the pot just to the side, just to help keep the clay malleable, and it worked really well. It was a very time-consuming process, gradually rolling the clay flat, but I didn't want to rush it and go too quickly and risk damaging it. So as you can just see here, as I'd rolled it into some new areas, I also made sure it was still firmly pressed down so it wasn't going to risk moving up from the surface. So I carried on using this method, and as you can see here, I've now made some more progress. And now the entrance to all 6 of the lanes into the shed has now been covered with the clay. So I now just want to flatten out this section here. And again, I'm just doing the same method as I was before, pressing it into the sleepers, making sure that it was firmly down on the surface. Now, I wasn't intending on there being this much of a gap in me showing you the progress I was making, but it turned out that I didn't actually press record for the next section of clip, so it jumps on to this bit here. So as you can see, when I'm adding on these new pieces, I overlap it with the section that I've already flattened to make sure that it keeps it all connected then as one large area and keeps it smooth when I then go over it with the rolling pin. Now, as you'll see later on in the video, this worked really well, helping me maintain this surface and limited the amount of join lines that you could visibly see. So I'll just gradually start to speed up the footage here, and then you can see the gradual process as the hard standing begins to come to a finish. Now, I have to say, my hands were incredibly sore at the end of this, with the amount of time they were spent pressing down very hard on the rolling pin, trying to keep an even pressure to make sure that the surface had an even surface with no lumps or bumps anywhere. So here you can see me just getting another piece of clay from the packet. You can see I'm just using the knife again just to remove a set amount each time, and then making sure that I seal up the packet with a sealable strip that they give you so that it doesn't dry out too much. I also put a bit of water on the clay just to help it stay malleable, so that when I then could add it onto the sections here, it then made it easier to blend in with the rest of the hard standing area. So now that the main part of the hard standing was complete, I used this old Limacoach to help me clear the grooves for the wheels of any locomotives or rolling stock that would be going into these lines. And as you can see here, it rolls through with absolutely no resistance. So having now done this for the first 4 lines, I thought I would show you the process that I used to get the grooves on the last 2 lines. So I held the coach by the very front and put a lot of pressure on the front wheel set of the coach to try and help put the groove into the clay, ready so that it could then be scooped out or scraped out if necessary. It's important to note that I did use an older piece of rolling stock to do this, being the Limacoach, as this had much wider pizza cutter style of wheels. After I had made these grooves, I then applied some water to the surface of the hard standing, just so that the clay didn't dry out, as I had to leave it for a couple of hours to go and do something. The clip that you're seeing here was recorded after I had got back, and the water that I put on the surface just to keep it damp had also soaked into the grooves either sides of the rails. This helped incredibly. As you can see here, it then made cleaning out these grooves much easier. And as you can see here, just using this metal tool here, I was able to clean out these grooves with such ease, and it was very satisfying, especially with some of them. I were able to get the grooves cleaned out in one straight run. After I had removed the excess clay from the recesses next to the rails, I then turned this tool upside down to then help smooth out the sides of the groove, as you can see here. So that's the first two tracks on the left hand side with the grooves cleared out there. And here you can see me just testing a wagon to make sure there's no lumps, bumps or catchy spots on the tracks that I have done. This time I used a Pico wagon instead of the old Lima coach that I used earlier on, because I wanted to see if something with a much lighter weight to it would react in the same way. So with that short test done, now it's back to clearing out these grooves. And there we go, all of those grooves are now cleaned out. So here you can see the finished hard standing area for this shed. You can see there's a little bit of damage to that corner over there, but that's not going to be too much of a problem because that will be covered up by the shed itself. So hopefully that shouldn't be too much of a problem. As you can see here, the edges have started drying, they've gone a bit white, and as you can see down the middle of each track, you can just about see the sleeper details with how I've made the grooves, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference once I've added some weathering. So I'll now just put the shed back on top so you can see how it looks with it on. And as you can see, it fits very nicely. I'm going to add a little bit more of the clay to the outside on the left there, but that will be as a separate, I'll do off screen, just to add some more walking pavement space around there. You can see there's a slight walkway down the back, down the side here as well. So it's now the next morning, and as you can see here, the hard standing clay has dried really well. A little bit cold to the touch, so I think it might still need to dry out a little bit more. Sorry for the noise of the car going past there. There was a little bit of a gap appearing on the edges of some of the rails, as you can see here. I'm not too worried about that because that's going to be covered over by the roof of the shed. I do plan to have the roof of the shed removable so it can lift off and you can look inside and enjoy the view in there. But once I've weathered this area and added a few details, I can hide any of that gaps like that up, or if I need to, I can add a little bit of paint or filler in the gap just to make sure there's not too much of a problem with it. As you can see, not only have I completed the hard standing for the steam shed over here, I have now done the hard standing for the diesel depot, which will be over here off the mainline tracks. And as you can see, there's a little notch I've taken out here, so this fits in nicely, just like that. So it then sinks it down a bit so it's not too high, but then it's not too low either. There's going to be a shed that I'm going to be building that's going to go over these two tracks here, and then this track here just going to be on the outside of that shed. So that's pretty much it for today's video. Next week I'm going to be showing you the progress I'm going to make with the ballasting, which you can see I've started off here. This isn't glued down, this is just placed down just so I can start getting an idea of how it will all look. So I'm going to be ballasting everything along the edge of here, and I'm also planning hopefully to do some ballasting along here as well. So we'll see how that goes and you'll see it in the next video. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please do consider giving it a like and indeed subscribing to the channel. It's free. If you've got any comments or suggestions on how you've done hard standing for your layout, let me know down in the comments section below. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.